The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Right. Get yourselves together. Right. Stand up and live your life. Right. Get yourselves together. Right. Hands up high.
Get down. Stop.
That's the AR.
Welcome to the Rise Above Show. I am Joe Perroni.
I'm Heidi Mancini. Today's show is brought to you by VegasMealPrep.com. Jay Jung from City Athletic Club.
All right, so today, let's just get right into the show. About 11 days ago, people already know this, that there was a Las Vegas shooting, and 58 people died, and I think there was 489 that were injured. And where we're recording this right now, we're about, 2 miles from that? 3 miles? So it's been a really interesting week and a half or so. So I really wanted to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of this whole thing. Because believe it or not, there is some good, so I want to put that up front. And also, it's been, I want to say that I'm totally sad over this whole thing. And that's appropriate. I am. But Las Vegas is a very weird place to me because I'm from New York, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have this connection to guns that a lot of people seem to here. So I've noticed a lot of strange things here, and I want to get into that a little bit. But let's talk about the good. It was Monday morning, and you take it from there.
Well, I just got a bunch of text messages from people texting me and calling me, voice messages, to make sure that you and I were okay, that we're from different areas of the country, just to make sure that we were okay. So that was the first I'd heard of it, because we were already in bed when that shooting went off. And basically, my feeling was, at first I hope none of my friends were in that. And then, I just was not, it's weird because I had a feeling of, I knew this was going to happen. Like, I don't know, it was just a weird Like, I wasn't surprised. I really wasn't surprised that somebody went crazy in Las Vegas, because it's bound to happen at some point. So
we're a tourist area. It's
I was just
happen.
thankful that I didn't know anybody that was in it, that got shot. So, and then my one friend, Amber, my one friend and client, she works down on the Strip, so she was one of the first ones I texted just to make sure she was okay, because I know she works down there and was coming home. She gets out on her shift around 11, and I wasn't sure what time the shooting started. So, but other than that,
Yeah, and I've got clients. They work on the Strip. And, it's really interesting through Facebook about how people around the country, like I wake up in the morning, I'm like, wow, people care about me. They're asking how I am. And then I sent out some, messages too. And that's the good, right? In the end, I think, we care about each other. And that's a good thing. The other thing that was really amazing about Las Vegas is they actually had like a 5-hour wait to donate blood. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of caring people. I mean, so many people stepped up donating blood. They were, donating food, Gatorade, water, all these things. Actually, too much, people had to get turned away. And so in that sense, you could be really proud of the people who live here, and it's great. I also train 2 police officers, and they're in the middle of that. And it's like, but my brain works different, right? Like 2 weeks ago, we did a show on empathy deficit. And my version of empathy is that I don't want these police to have to face up people that have military grade weapons. And it's really interesting because part of the ugly that I see with this is, unfortunately, every time we have a massacre in this country, the sales of guns and ammunition go up. So it's like we want more violence. And it's really disgusting to me. It's like, to me, if you had real empathy for people around you, and I know that it's such an interesting, it's ironic, it's a paradox, whatever you want to call it, but some of the same people who are donating blood are the same ones who left there and then went out and bought more guns or ammunition.
Well, I think when people do that too, I think there's a combination of, there's a fear that goes along with that they go out with the intention, I don't know because I don't own a gun, that I'm going to have to protect my family now because of something like this happening. I think the intent for a lot of people going out after something like that happens is for that reason. But then to step back and look at it in a reasonable way and say, well, but the reality is that, most of us we can't get a big gun like that, semi-automatic, legally. So if you want to carry a little pistol, you can get a pistol permit if you want, or small handgun permit. But really up against something like that, you don't really stand a chance anyway, because I would assume that most of the people that were in that arena were carrying, and they soon realized that, this gun that I have is not going to do me any good against a guy that's, shooting from however many feet up with a high-power weapon to my handgun that probably only shoots, I don't even know how far they shoot. But I think it's a sense of fear that a lot of times provokes people into, having weapons, guns and that. Me personally, I live my life differently. We talked about that this morning. Yeah. My father had guns. He was military. We had him in the house. We were basically told, don't ever touch them. That's not, the ammo. My dad was really careful about ammos over here, guns over here, so things were not close proximity. But my whole life growing up, my dad had guns, but we never saw them.
Right.
The only time I shouldn't say it. The only time I saw him was when my dad would get ready to go to do the reserves, and he'd have to have his stuff on. But other than that, there was, you wouldn't know it. And I didn't grow up being told you have to learn to shoot. You better learn how to, use a weapon. There was a different mindset, with my dad with that. And of course, he had it in the house to protect his family too. So I personally think I live my life in a way that, and it could be ignorant. It could be, you look through your glasses rose-colored. My dad used to say that all the time, that if I'm going to die because some crazy man comes in my house and blows my head off, you do that to me. I mean, there's a lot of domestic stuff that goes on. I believe that was the way I'm supposed to go out of this world, that my time was up. And yes, it would be nice if I could die of natural causes or, the way I want to, but most of us don't end up, dying that way. So I never lived my life in a way where I had to have a bunch of butcher knives in my house, a knife under my bed, a gun under a bat, anything like that. I just feel like, there's other powers out there that are keeping me safe when I need to be, and when the time comes, it's going to just happen. But I think a lot of people in in our country a lot of them are just motivated by fear, and that comes from, way back. It doesn't come from just somebody getting shot at. It comes from something that they've been taught at a very young age, and then of course there are the military, and there are different people that have to learn
Of course.
gun control, or not gun control, but how to use a gun because of their jobs. And those are probably the responsible ones, the ones that have to be responsible. But this guy that, shot all these people, everybody doesn't want to believe that, one person. We all want to come up with this conspiracy theory that, there was more behind this story than what they're telling us. And maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But believe it or not, there are people out there that can snap and, go off on a rampage and just kill a bunch of people. And when we talk about suicide in the country, it's if you have a gun sitting next to your bedstand and you're really depressed over finances, or your wife left you, your husband left you, maybe you're drugged out. That's the other thing. People say there's so many suicides in this country. Yes, there is. But a lot of those suicides are caused by people that are impaired already. They're drunk, or they're high, or they're wasted, and they blow their heads off. And if they didn't have a gun so readily available, if they're going to kill themselves, darn well they'll find another way. They'll hang themselves, they'll knife themselves, OD on a bunch of pills. But in our country, because we glorify guns so much, that I honestly, in my opinion, think that people shooting themselves in the head, they take glorification with that, opposed to, years ago people used to kill themselves with pills. You'd OD on pills, or you'd hang yourself, and now we're hearing more people blowing their heads off. And I just think that if the guns weren't so readily available without a really strict gun control, that it might alleviate some of the homicides and some of the, domestic stuff. You're having a fight with your spouse. You and I have had some good, arguments. In a fit of rage, or just that 1 second of you're mad, it only takes a second. Boom, you're gone. It doesn't take a lot of thought to pick up a handgun when you're pissed and shoot somebody between the eyes.
Well, let me go back again a little bit, because I want to go with some of the stuff you're talking about, and then I want to go over the list of the actual facts, okay? Because we do have numbers on this, so we don't and it's totally true. Somewhere down the line, people have bought in that you need to have a gun because they're fearful, and people use it for protection, and I can get that, right? There's a certain amount of that's true. But the numbers don't show that. The numbers show is if there's a gun in the household, you're much more likely to shoot yourself in a suicide attempt, or you're going to actually go through with it, or that somebody in the house is going to get shot because people get angry. And here's another thing people don't want to talk about: mental health in this country. About 1 out of every 8 people is an alcoholic. So I'm going to say a lot of those people are gun owners. So if you're drunk, I don't want you having a gun. And even worse, in Las Vegas, you're allowed to open carry. You can bring a gun into a bar and drink, and it's okay. Now,
but here's a comment. Not to interrupt you. There's a comment made this morning on your Facebook, about people coping in other countries. They deal with things easier because our lifestyles are so much worse now. Well, I'm going to debate that, only because in other countries, their lifestyle is far worse than ours as far as their food access. They have diseases in those countries. They have a lot more adversity to get through because of the poverty level in those countries. And I think it's more of a coping problem, which we've talked about on our show before. In this country, we're soft anymore. People that come from other countries, they learn how to deal with, their feelings of depression, or they learn how to deal with, this is my lifestyle. These are the things that I have to get along with. I have to get along on very little to survive, and they learn how to cope. They don't learn coping by, killing somebody, going beating somebody up, going on rampages, whatever they do. And I'm almost sure that there's probably is equally as much mental health in the foreign countries as there is here. But the way they deal with it and the way they cope with it is totally different. Our life in the United States is so easy. I don't ever want to hear anybody say life in our country is so difficult. We are one of the nicest countries to live in as far as our rights, our liberties, everything that we have available to us. That when somebody makes a comment that says, well, this country, we have a lot more adversity now to face, that's why people are shooting people. again, that's an excuse. We're not coming up with a solution. We're making an excuse. Well, people are shooting because life is hard. No, people are shooting because people are soft. There's a difference. And if we had to go back to the old way of life years ago, we've been carrying guns forever in this country. This isn't something new. We've had high-powered weapons way back in the Vietnam War, World War II, where we could blow anybody up at any time we wanted to, and we could shoot anybody. But back in the day, people learned how to work. They learned how to get along. They learned how to go, without a lot. Like our parents. Like I remember not having a lot. And my dad and my parents saying to me, just go out and fight your own battles. I'm not going to fight your battles for you. If somebody's making fun of you in school, go deal with it. And then, of course, if it got to a point where we couldn't deal with it, they would step in. But I don't like when I hear remarks like that because it's not true. We were used to be one of the superpowers, one of the super countries in the world. And because we become so soft and so tolerable of, people's behaviors and how awful we treat each other, it's an excuse. To me, there's no excuse for people carrying guns and killing somebody. There's no excuse for somebody shooting their head off with all the medical resources that we have and the health care that we have and counseling services that we have. It's because we don't really care about each other that much. We only care when it's somebody in our family gets shot in the head or one of our friends on the strip that happened to get blown up by some crazy. But, to get back on the subject, this guy, for people in this country, did not believe that one person is not capable of, orchestrating this and not being crazy. I mean, everybody has this misconception that you have to be like crazy and off your bonkers to do this. This guy was not crazy, really. He was very methodical. He has behavioral things, narcissism that you talk about on the show. He could easily go out and plan something like this. But as people, we don't want to believe that one person is capable of all that hurt and destruction to people. We've had people in the past that have done it. Hitler's done it. Charles Manson's done it. The guy that they based the movie Psycho off of did it. I mean, these guys are amazing when you think about it, what they're able to pull off, because the rest of us walk around with this thought that, we're going to be invaded by all these people that are going to kill us. We don't have to worry about it because we're just going to kill each other.
Yeah,
Let
me go back a
John,
little
you
bit.
got something to say back there? He's looking at me like, what are you talking about?
John's sick today, so
I just had to say
let me go
something
back, 'cause I'm
about
trying to-
that comment, because our country, we don't live in a hard country. We make it hard because
me
we
go
don't
back.
teach our children how
Let
to
me
cope.
go back a little bit because you trace through so many things, and I actually have done a what you call like a biopsychosocial on the killer, which I think is interesting because when I run it through my stuff, it's really easy to see how this could have happened. Whereas in the news, they're saying they can't fit him into a profile. He fits our profile perfectly, by the way, if you follow our show. But let's put that back a little bit. Let's take it from the fact how we glorify guns. And I'm not here to make fun of anybody because this is a horrible situation, but I need to put it up there as a caricature. This Jason Aldean, right? He's another one of these country guys that a good man with a gun will be able to kill a bad man with a gun, the whole N.R.A. BS stuff. Okay, as you saw in the video that we showed, okay, he's up on stage. When he heard those gunshots, he knew something was wrong. You know why? Because he plays the same freaking concert every night of his life. He knows that there was something wrong. He stopped, and it was like somebody turned on a light and a cockroach zipped off the stage. So much for the good guy with a gun. He has a whole crew with guns. And what did they do? They ran. And I'm not saying they shouldn't. They need to, but that's my point. My point is that you will not be able to handle this type of situation. You need to leave it to the professionals. And this Jason Aldean, again, acting like big tough guy like a lot of these country guys are, because we sell guns as the new masculinity. Like your father, right? Why be masculine when you can get a gun to make you feel masculine, right? Like your father was a real man, and there were real men. John's one too. He fought in Saigon. Okay, that's a guy. That's a man right there. These guys that are thinking that they're fighting at the Boulevard Mall or wherever they're going to be fighting are ridiculous. These Jason Aldean types. I'm a country guy. I've got my gun. I'm so tough. The first second you hear a gunshot, you fly off that stage. And you know what? I'm not blaming him for that, but I'm going to blame him for this. You have a microphone. There's 22,000 people of your family and friends that are possible to live your lifestyle. And you can't say, those aren't fireworks, that's not part of my show. Please, duck and cover. Or be like every other fake country guy. God's prayers are with you, as if a prayer is going to help you, right? Say something. But he ran off the stage. Nobody said anything and left 22,000 people not knowing what's going on as sitting ducks. And for some reason, the light on the stage went off, but it went on the crowd. I mean, were you trying to get more people killed? I'm not saying that really, okay? That's facetious. But the point is that, listen, if you're going to be some tough country guy who thinks that your spine is made out of steel and you're this big, rough guy, why don't you show something? You showed nothing. There was one guy, and I can't think of his name. He was also a hero. Let's say that, because he's a Southern guy, I guess. I'm not into country music, so I don't know where he's from. But he said he was a proponent of the Second Amendment, every part of it. He's also saying that there needs to be some type of control. Why? Because him and his crew have guns on them. But they sat there in a crowd of 22,000 people with these little pistols trying to aim up 32 floors from a half a mile, quarter of a mile away. And they knew that at that moment, if they picked up a gun, the cops were going to shoot them. So let's talk logistics. Let's be smart, okay? That's something that we don't want to do in this country. Like we talked about last week, and John and I love talking to John, because if he thinks I'm wrong, he'll say it immediately, and we have a nice conversation, and I love that. And I get a little smarter, and hopefully he does too. But the real conversation is when 58 people are killed and almost 500 are injured, you shouldn't batten down the hatches and say, F you, I want to keep my guns, I'm going to buy more ammo. The conversation should be, how can we make this safer? Nobody's saying ditch the Second Amendment, but we're saying, how can we make it so this type of stuff doesn't happen on a regular basis? There is a mass murder, a mass shooting in America every single day. We just don't hear it all the time. A mass shooting, in terms of the real definition, is when 4 people get shot at the same time. That happens every day. Think about that. I think in the year 2013, only 2 people in Japan were shot the whole year. That's the conversation to have. Because if you're telling me that guns kill people, guns don't kill people, people kill people, I'll agree with that. Let me go with you on that. Guns do kill people. I mean, they make it easier, but let's just ditch that. Let's just say people kill people. Okay. Then what is wrong with American citizens? Are we that dysfunctional? Are we that maladaptive? Are we that narcissistic? Are we that fearful? Are we that crazy? Are we that uncaring about citizens? Because we kill people at a rate that is so incredibly high compared to every other first world nation. I heard a couple of people today trying to debate this with me on Facebook, and it's really funny. They mention these countries that don't even have governments. We're not comparing it to that. We're comparing to the top 22 first world nations. We come in last place. I'm sick and tired of hearing people talk about American excellence. American excellence, and you're okay with coming in last place in terms of how many people we kill with guns on a daily basis. And the argument for them is, how can we make it so I get to keep my gun? Not how we can make it safer for people, but how can I keep my gun? That's not an honest conversation. All that tells me is that there's some psychopathic thing working in this situation. What do you think?
Well, I agree. I think it comes down to, to come up with a solution of how you can make it better instead of hanging on to your fear and I still got to have the gun. I mean, we can all admit that people holding the gun kill people, no doubt. But, I don't know. I just think that I don't even know what to think, to be honest with you, because everybody has their this country, mentally speaking, is not right as far as most of the people in this country. They're mental, whatever.
Yeah.
And there's such a gap between help, no help, who gets the help, who doesn't get the help. And then, like I said, there's a stigma still attached to counseling that, people are still afraid to go to a counselor because they don't want to be labeled. And then there's, the costs that that accrue with that. some people can afford it, some can't. I mean, this situation, this guy had tons of money,
Right.
so he could have easily afforded counseling, every day of the week.
But let me tell you something about that too. Okay, when we have a mass shooting, we forget the word shooting. Like, we have shooting, and then people say mental illness, and I'm going, okay, mass shooting. Right?
You have to be
They
mentally-
always take it
but I
off
think
the
in
thing.
some sense, Joe, you have to be. There's a breakdown all the way before the gun and the shooting. I mean, it's like, what came first, the horse or the carriage?
Right.
Okay, that's the point I was trying to make
Right.
before.
No, I get it, but here's the thing too. Okay, so let's say again, I agree with, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Do we agree that nuclear weapons don't kill people, people kill people? So why do we constantly try to invade or do anything we can through aversive control of other countries so they don't get their hands on nuclear weapons? Because people that are mentally unstable use weapons to kill people, right? It's the same thing. Like, you could even say it this way. Does heroin kill people? No. People who take heroin kill themselves. So when you say we have a heroin epidemic in this country, okay, so let's say that in Trump country, other than Seattle, Washington, where they do have a big opioid problem, but mainly the opioid problem in America is through Trump country, older white guys. So if you believe then that there's an opioid epidemic, there's not, right? Because opioids don't kill anybody. It's the people who have a sickness in themselves trying to cover up their problems that use opioids. So leave the opioids alone. It's the same mentality, but they switch it when it comes to guns because somehow the N.R.A., no regulations allowed, somehow has bought everybody, and somehow our manliness, or men anyway, because I don't expect women to be manly, but the men have really lost a lot of testosterone in this country, and they use a gun as a surrogate penis as far as I'm concerned. They think it makes them strong and tough, and it only makes you look more weak. What do you think?
If that's what, yeah.
Well, I'll continue with it. Let's have that talk then about mental illness, all right? Because there is some of that here. There's no doubt. But here's where the problem is, okay? As a mental health professional, I can tell you this: if you come to me, everything's confidential. You just solve the problem, right? Okay, because nobody's going to know who is mentally ill, because no therapist is going to give up their client. The only way you're going to give up your client in any way, shape, or form is if they come to you and say, I'm going to kill myself. Well, then that's reportable. So you would be stopping a suicide, hopefully. Or if they say, so-and-so is on my list, I want to kill them, and I have a gun to do it. Okay, then I will report that. But everything else is just not reportable. You can't give up people. And if you follow the bouncing ball on this, it's really hard. What I will tell you is that many average American citizens all have the same profile as this killer did. So you really can't go down that road. Here's a road we can try to go down, right? Like, let's pick out mental illness. Who would do something like this? An angry person? Okay. Is that an illness? Most people I know are angry. Narcissistic? Sure. But is that going to get you thrown in jail? Is that something bad? We have a president who's narcissistic. It's okay there. You can be president. It's not a problem. People love his narcissism. We're a narcissistic country. We talked about it 2 weeks ago. Narcissism comes up, empathy comes down. Is that a recipe for a killer? Absolutely yes. But can you put somebody in jail for that? No, you have to wait for something to happen. Plus, I'll tell you something else. If you're a narcissist, if you're a sociopath, if you're a psychopath, you think things are good. You think you're better than everybody. Why would you come to me for help? You think I need help. There's a bunch of people I've talked to in the last week that they're not going to say it straight out, but it's implied. So almost 500 people got hurt, probably more. We almost killed 60 people in Las Vegas. Listen, that's okay. That's just collateral damage. That's just part of the Second Amendment. It's not a problem. Don't take away my gun. It's okay for that to happen, because if you're not having the conversation to make it better, that means you are, in a roundabout way, saying it's perfectly fine for this kind of damage to happen. Let's just all wait for the next one. And like my uncle said a long time ago, he was talking to somebody at the dinner table. I'm not going to get into that conversation, but he said, have you been hurt enough to make a change in your life? And I remember that when I was a kid. I don't know why, but I do, and I'm going to use it right here. You have to ask the American people, have you been hurt enough to make a change? Oh, no. I see guys on TV all the time, you know, and they're doing all these Facebook posts. And I got to tell you, I love doing our show. We're pretty popular, I'm not going to lie, you know, but I have to be honest, when we talk about something that's a little bit shaky like this, where people get maybe offended, our listenership goes down. Our two highest rated shows, we had a porn star, so that tells you where the American public sits. But I can tell you this, when I look at, say, somebody, I'll mention his name, why not? Alex Jones, I believe his name is, from InfoWars, absolute fake news. Listen, all of us right here, we're about 2-3 miles away from where this massacre happened. This jerk doesn't know anything. He just starts spouting off saying things, and he gets about 1 million views. People love him. Donald Trump will actually quote him. He doesn't know anything. Listen, drive past the Mandalay Bay today. What you'll see is exactly what they told you in the news. 2 broken windows. All these other shooters from all over the place shooting through windows on the 4th floor and the whatever. They're shooting through windows that didn't break. Go down there, take a look. It didn't happen. Sorry. You know, and that's the thing that you talk about mental illness. I will tell you that if you are buying multiple weapons, stocking up on ammunition, because you're worried about the zombie apocalypse, you're worried about the U.S. government taking their tank and driving down the street, you're getting practically an erection looking at your rifles. Listen, you have a mental illness. I'm sorry, but you do. Now, you think that you don't, so you're not going to come to me, so you don't have to worry about it. We don't have to report you. But listen, there's a problem, right? Some people collect records. Some people collect, I don't know, whatever, Barbie dolls. But if you're collecting weapons for the thing of, it's a beautiful sight, the thought of this thing being able to destroy human flesh, there's something wrong with you, right? So let's take a little break. I want to go back, because what I really want to show here, this killer, and I really don't want to say his name, you know, because then there's going to be a bunch of you idiots out there who are on the other side thinking, I can outdo this guy. I can kill more, right? So I don't even want to say his name. But I'm going to tell you that he is not that crazy. He is really not a lone wolf. He represents a lot of angry white America out there. So we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to the Rise Above Show. I am Joe Perroni.
Heidi Mancini.
And tell people about our sponsors again real quick. This segment is from...
This segment... I've never done this before. This segment is brought to you by Vegas Meal Prep and Jay Jung City Athletic Club.
I like the way that sounds. That's pretty cool. All right. So what you're going to hear on the news, and what I've read a lot of so far, is that this killer doesn't fit the profile of what you would say a mass murderer is. And so I was looking into that myself. So I started gathering as much information as I could. And what I find is that, listen, he fits the profile perfectly. I mean, it makes total sense. And I don't know why they're not saying it, but let me just run through this real quick. First of all, I heard on Fox News, they started off with this. They said they can't find a reason to hate this guy because they can't categorize him. Let me help them and some of their listeners. Here's the category for you. He came to Las Vegas and he killed almost 60 people and injured 500 others. That's your category, okay? You can hate him for that. What you're really trying to say in an offhanded way, and I can't say it for sure because I don't want to put words in these people's mouths, but this is what some people hear. Because he wasn't black or because he wasn't Muslim, you can't categorize him. He was white. By the way, most mass murderers are. So there's your category. So stop lying, okay? You're not therapists, you're not psychologists, you're not anything. You're just people trying to push an agenda, and people get confused. So let's take it from the top. Oh, the other thing that they said too, it must be a liberal plant because why would someone who is from Mesquite or a rural area shoot country people? And he was at this, I don't even know what it's called, this country fest. Why would he shoot them unless he had an agenda to kill conservative people? Okay, but then they forgot to tell you the next day that he was actually here a week before at the Life is Beautiful show, which was liberal, and he was also in Chicago trying to aim up, but he didn't get the room he wanted for Lollapalooza, which is liberal. So you left that part out. So let's just say he was and he wanted to kill a mass group of people that were together in a group. He couldn't care less what their political agenda was. So let's go over this. Angry, white male, 64 years old, from a rural area, no kids, no meaningful relationships in his life that could be found. Now, as we told you a couple of weeks ago, what does depression look like in a white man typically? Agitation and anger. They're trying to cover up something. Mm-hmm. So we already have that. What's the number one age group and gender and color of people who commit suicide? Okay, what's the highest risk group? That's right, we told you that on this show like 2 weeks ago. Between 45 and 65, and you're white. So he fits the profile. Angry, white guy, no meaningful relationships, depressed, bitter, and they did say he was trying to figure out a way to get out of there, which I'm probably going to look into this more, but it seems like, okay, if he wanted to get out of there, where is he going to go? Okay, to go kill more people. Listen, it's a suicide mission, okay? That's what it is. It's a freaking tantrum. That's what I talked about a couple of weeks ago on the show, is that these white guys, they want to make fun of other people by calling them snowflakes. Here we have your typical snowflake. He wanted to throw a tantrum, unbelievably so, and go out in flames. And that's what he did. And it's not much different than a lot of white guys that are doing this today anyway. He just killed a lot of people. That's where the difference is. But can you figure it out that he would have done this? No, not to this degree. But one of the things we talk about on the show a lot is childhood trauma, which when we do that on these shows, our ratings go down because people don't care that much. And it's not in the DSM. It's not diagnosable. But it's the cause of everything else. So what might cause childhood trauma, and did he have it? Let's take a look. His father was completely not there for him. No emotional connection to his father whatsoever, in and out of his life. But the last time he saw his father was arrested when this killer was 7 years old. So he really had no father in his life. His father, way back when, was diagnosed as being a psychopath. His father was a famous bank robber who also escaped and was on the run and was out there somewhere. Never thought to see his son. So here we go. We have projective identification, right? We have this really bad human being out there and this boy. Now, for you Christians out there, because I've heard a lot about prayers and being Christian, a lot of you are fake, I'm sorry to say, because a true Christian would pray for all the dead. Okay, not just the ones you like. So if you're a Christian, yeah, prayers for the family and prayers for all the people who died. But when we say died, we also mean the killer, because he was human too. Look at him as a 7-year-old, a psychopathic father that never cared about him, left him when he was 7, and no identity whatsoever. His mother, again, there was no warmth, supposedly. She was emotionally unavailable. She had 4 kids. They were poor. Do you see what I'm setting up? He had no parents, okay? I'm not crying for him, okay? I'm just telling you that all of this garbage in the newspaper, it's not a conspiracy theory, but they're just not telling you because they're not looking into the true mental health issues. Because when they say he's a lone wolf, he's not a lone wolf. There's plenty of angry white men out there. So let's go. Here's one. Yeah, you're just sick, that's all. So let's go over this too. That's something that's very interesting. Women out there, play along with me, because I can't prove this, but I can kind of prove it. This guy was a multimillionaire. He was married and divorced twice, but never paid alimony. Does that seem odd to you? When is it that a guy is a multimillionaire that doesn't pay alimony? Go ahead, tell me. What's the percentage? How would that happen?
I don't know. It doesn't usually.
Okay, I'll finish it. It's because the man is probably abusive. He's probably putting her in a situation where she feels her life is in danger, and it's a dangerous situation. So she just either gets out or leaves, or he just leaves her with something. That's it. That is the main reason why a man who's a multimillionaire would not pay any alimony at all. So that happened twice. Now look at the girl he's with now. I don't know her. Maybe she's a nice lady. I don't know. But she seems really submissive, and she has no idea that this guy was into guns. Let's say we believe that. I kind of do. Because she seems like she was just there. Now, reports say, in public, he would scold and yell at her. He would pay for her coffee and go, "I'm paying for your coffee just like I pay for you." What? Okay, so play along. How many white angry men, millionaires, do you know that treat their women like garbage, that they're just like an extra accessory to them? A lot. How many multimillionaires do you know that are psychopaths or sociopaths? It's about 500% higher than it is for people who are not millionaires. So again, we're still in that area. So what we're looking at also is a guy who has unresolved trauma. He has complex PTSD. That's obvious. How do we know that his emotions were stunted? Everybody who talked to him said so. I got that just from looking at the interviews. And everybody who knew him. They said not only was he the quiet guy, but he was aggressively standoffish. He had an F-you attitude towards everybody. Okay? So let's move on from that. He did admit to having low-level anxiety his whole life. If you watch our show, I tell you, CPTSD will give you low-level anxiety your whole life. Thus, he had a psychiatrist, not a therapist, give him Valium. I'm not saying that caused this, but again, he was not looked into mentally. He was being medicated. Now, what do people do that have suppressed emotion? They continue to try to suppress it by other things. They have addictions. Did he have an addiction? He did. He had 2 addictions, but you're not going to hear about it because this is Las Vegas and we love addictions here. Listen, he was reported to have spent sometimes 20 hours a day gambling at a slot machine, which is about as lonely of a life as you can get. And he did this over and over and over again. All the major casinos here knew who he was. He was a high roller. Did he have a gambling addiction? Yes. Does anybody in Las Vegas want to say that? No, because we love people with gambling addictions. What was he doing while he was gambling? Drinking. Yes, he was an alcoholic too. Okay, so how did he make up for all this in his life? He made a lot of money. But how did he make money? With people? No. Buying and selling real estate, which is a perfectly fine thing to do, except he never had to have any emotional connection to anybody. So when you saw his brother talk about him, it was like, yeah, he's a good guy to us because he makes a lot of money. Well, but basically he said that he had no emotional connection to his brother. So when you go down this, yes, this guy was a narcissist. He was a malignant narcissist. He had sadistic tendencies, obviously. Sociopathic, absolutely. Listen, this is not rocket science. I'm not the smartest therapist in the history of the world. But these are things that you see here that in the newspaper, they don't tell you that. What they want to tell you is all these other weird conspiracy theories that there was like 10 gunmen in different places. Yeah, like I said, we're a few miles away from the Strip. We all know people, or at least we know people who know people. No sign of the other shooters. That's only out there in the somewhere, the Facebook area to bump it up. I've heard some Republicans, or let's call them conservatives, saying that the killings never happened because there wasn't enough blood in the pictures that they saw. So it's a big fake thing to go for the big gun grab. Listen, none of that is. Okay, this guy is really not, he did it probably alone. Probably, I can't prove it, but from what I gave you right now, none of these things are something that a therapist would ever turn anybody in for. I'm not trying to scare you, but this is what we're looking at. Like, this is fairly normal for a lot of older white guys in rural areas. And if you really think you need to stock up on guns because, like I said, someone's going to attack you, you've got tanks running down, you have to be worried about the U.S. Air Force bombing your house. Listen, you have real problems, and there's a lot of people just like him.
Well, one of my concerns has always been that we keep running things the same way we did like 300 years ago with everything, and maybe we need to change some stuff that's going on with ethics and reporting and things like that we can rewrite things that are going on even in our Constitution. That when we said guns were there back in when we signed the Declaration of Independence, the people were different back then. The type of guns that they had access to were muskets. We've evolved into more high-tech killing machines, bombs. People have evolved differently. We're a little more technology savvy these days. So maybe they need to start coming into the future and saying, you know what? We know we said these things 200 years ago, but people 200 years ago lived very simple on the plains, and they literally were probably fighting for their lives. They were hunting. They were protecting their land with guns, whatever, because that's how they did things back then. But I hope we've become a little more civilized and sophisticated, that may be something that the country needs to look at too, to say, why are we running things in every aspect just about the same as we did 200 years ago? And, like I said, we all know that there's the gun issue that was based on a musket. That's right. Our amendment, not on semi-automatic.
And also it's a well-regulated militia. But okay, John, so I know you like our show for one of the reasons is, and I kind of took it too far over, but we want to fix, right? I don't want to just say the problem, massive problems. Let me see what I can do here to find a solution. Do I have all the answers? No, but let's try, right? It's better than just saying we're screwed and hopeless, right? Like a lot of these people do. Okay, let's start off with this. I don't mind if you have a gun. That's cool. I just, I can understand why. I totally get that side of the argument. Absolutely, 100%. Second Amendment, I'm in. What I'm not in with is that when you're afraid to take a mental health exam. That's what I'm afraid of. Because you tell me you're afraid to take it, then I'm saying I'm afraid for you to have a gun. And if you're afraid to take a mental health exam and I see you with a gun, now I'm really worried. I might shoot you myself. I'm going to be a lot more worried. So what we do, let's take the MMPI, right? The policemen take this test sometimes. The Minnesota Multiphasic Index, depending on what state you're in, you might have to take this test. Just so you know, most cops, about 50% after 5 years on the force, do not pass this test. So that's what I'm saying. If you're going to have a gun and you're a citizen, I still want you to pass this test. If you're saying that you're not psychologically okay to pass this test, then you should not be having a gun. So that's first off. I don't see, in Japan, you have to be able to prove that you're mentally healthy. I don't see anything wrong with that. And if you don't like that test, It's okay. I'll bargain. Let's take a different one. But you need some type of mental health test.
How often?
That's what I was just going to say.
Interesting. I
They
haven't
need
thought
to-
about that. How about every 2 to 3 years? Every 3?
How about every time you
Driver's
renew
license?
your driver's license?
I'm good. See, we solved it. So that's one. If you're telling me you don't want to take the test, I'm really worried. Number 2, if I can do this real quick, I can tell you, when you have a house, homeowners insurance, it's very high, or you may not be able to get homeowners insurance if you own a chow or a pit bull. I have both. I can probably prove to you that that is a deterrent for crime. You cannot prove that having a gun on your property is a deterrent to crime because the numbers prove otherwise. As a matter of fact, well, you know what? I'm not going to go through all this now because we don't have a lot of time, but let's just say that it is more likely you're going to commit suicide or somebody in your family will be dying from your own gun. So it's actually a hazard. So let's do it like this. You can have your gun at your home. But I'm saying to you, your insurance is going to go sky high. You're going to have to pay for that because I'm not going to pay for other people's stuff when they shoot themselves in the foot. I'm not going to pay for when my next door neighbor shoots me. You know, and on an airline, if they crash and the person dies, the insurance company, I believe, owes each person or family $1 million. That's cool. Guess what? You're going to be a lot more caring about your gun right now. Because what I would do is, your gun, if you kill somebody and it's not justified, that's $1 million. That's $1 million. So we'll hit you where it hurts, money. And I've got clients who have like smart cars, whatever, the key, when they get in their car, it's a thumbprint. So you can't even steal their car. Okay, why can't we have that on guns? So I know who owns that gun and where it went. And I tell you what, if somebody does steal that gun from you and you know that if that gun is in the process of taking somebody's life and it's going to cost you $1 million, guess what? You're going to be calling the cops real quick. You know, this isn't rocket science, okay? There's like 3 or 4 murders per year in Japan. They're not that much better than us, are we? Maybe you think they are. Australia figured out their problem within like 10, 15 years. They don't even have a homicide problem anymore. You know, I mean, they do a little bit, not like it was with guns. So those are some of the fixes that I have. John, you want to throw in anything real quick? No? You're good? You're sick today. Okay, then. So this has been the Rise Above Show. I am Joe Perroni.
I'm Heidi Mancini.